Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Book to Block, the series where I bring my fantasy novel to life in Minecraft, one block at a time. In today's episode, we're over here on this side of the mountain. So you can see back there is all the village that we've been working on recently. And today we're going to work on this big open space here, where you can see I've done trees on either side, but this area is left open. So what I'm planning to do today is do another tree episode. But instead of doing a spruce tree episode like I did in episode 2, check that out if you haven't seen it yet. I did a lot of different variations, which are all included in this forest back here. You can see all the different types that I've kind of scattered around. In today's episode, we're going to be working on more of a deciduous forest. So we're doing a bunch of different like oak types, some birches. We'll mix in a couple of spruce trees just because it can be a mixed forest, and some other little ones for other areas, kind of like the apple trees that I said I would add over to the farming district. I'll also add those in today. So let's get to start building those, and then I can show you how I built each one, and then we can bring them over here and start working on this area. All right, so here we are on the outskirts of the mountain range. Back there is where we just were, but here, as you can see, this is where I did my second episode, the episode on the spruce trees. So you have all the different spruce trees I lined up here for that episode. And in this episode, I've prepared all these trees, more of the deciduous and oak, spruce, and birch, sorry. And then over here, I got my apple trees. So I'll just walk through them just so you can get a closer look at each one. We'll start with the birch one because there's a few less of them. So over here, I kind of did a couple size variations, starting on the small one. So instead of using the birch wood, because it's really thick for a small tree, I used these walls. So the diorite walls are very similar in texture. As you can see, I can use them to merge together with the birch trees. But for this one, it's just some walls and then some birch leaves kind of tossed on top. You can also add in some short grass kind of on top of them. Adds a little bit more fluffiness to your trees. For that, you'll need to do things like having the force place, because otherwise it wouldn't let you. If you wanted to do this in kind of survival without any of these kind of creative cheats, you would have to use either some moss or grass on top, and then you can place your short grass and other types of the natural blocks from like in here of all these kinds on top. Next one up is a little bit larger, so it's got a couple branches off. You can kind of see I'm using a block in the center. I could have used just another wall and it connects all through, just to add a couple more branches just so it's a little bit larger, so it's just slightly different. Then going up to these two sizes. So I did a little bit of a curve in the branches using these diorite stairs to kind of smooth in between, so it's not just a very sharp exit like this. So put those back. And then again using the walls as the branches, and then just kind of placing the leaves on top and around, and then kind of playing with the different shape however you like it to look. This one's very similar, just a slight variation, just so I've got more to work with. And then finally the large birch tree. I did a lot of the kind of root work, so different roots going into the ground, smoothing out with the slabs, stairs, and then walls of the diorite again. And then going up some more branches. This one kind of is two-tiered, so you got your first bunch of branches out here, and then when you come up here, there's some more branches for a little bit more height, just a different shape of the tree. Next up, we'll go with the kind of oak trees, or the deciduous. It's kind of hard to call them oak trees because they look very different from real-life oak trees. It's just the Minecraft uses this as the oak tree, so that's what I call it. So starting off the smallest, I'm using spruce fences, very similar to how I did on the birch, and just some leaves around. I didn't do too much of the short grass on these ones, just so I could keep it nice and simple for this, just for the showing. Next up is just slightly taller variation, a couple offshoots of the branches with the fences, and just covering sparingly with the leaves. Next up to the kind of medium size, so going onto the oak wood and then using slabs and then possibly stairs kind of make the branches, and then surrounding with the leaves. So this is kind of the medium version, and then the large version. So these two are very similar. They're made using the same technique. This one just has the short grass on, so you can kind of see the difference between the two. So I'm going for a slightly thicker trunk with more of the roots, as you can see. They kind of bring down, having some of the leaves coming down there. And it's just a very kind of a ball of leaves. I'm using both the oak and I think the acacia on this one. Looks like I didn't paint this one, but you can kind of mix around with the leaf types that you think work well together. Another one is this kind of pointed one. I kind of based this off one I saw on a walk I was going on recently. Kind of similar to the oak type with the leaves, but it's just kind of a pine shape with like the pointed edge, but it just adds, again, more variation. Now onto these two kind of larger versions. They're similar to these smaller ball ones, just slightly larger and with a lot more of the branches in. So if I come into here and select all of the, actually I can go in with the magic select. If I cut these, oh, so that's only some of them. I want to grab all of the different leaf types. So now if I cut this and lift it up, we can get a look at the structure underneath. So you can see all the different branches I did just to kind of build off of for the leaves. So I'll go back and slide this back on, paste that in. Now we got the leaves back on. And then it's very similar for this one. So now I'm going to show you how I kind of design these larger ones, because these smaller ones, it's just place your trunk and the kind of middle part of the tree, and then just randomly place leaves on until you're satisfied with the shape. For these two, as well as these two, it's a slightly different technique that I'll show now. All right, we're going to start off in the axiom menu here. First thing I'm going to do is use the path tool. So this one I've been using to do the trunks. So if I click twice here, I can then drag this up, and it kind of gives you a shape in between, depending on the curve type you use. The line with this one, the Brissaham, it doesn't add in the little bits in between, so you can see it just jumps on the corners. Whereas if you use the DDA one, it fills in those gaps, so it's a little bit more connected in a way. The catenary kind of is a low one, so it kind of adds a curve, but it anchors on the bottom bit here. Catman roll, that kind of goes in between a little bit better. It's slightly similar to the line. Well, it's pretty much the same. It just has a couple more differences. And then Bellier's curve, for this purpose, is the same. You tend to find more of the differences when you add in a third one. As you can see now, it curves like this. You can kind of see, so the Catman roll goes to each of the points, whereas the Bezier kind of interprets in between. And then the line, DDA, and the catenary. So you can kind of see how each one's slightly different. For this one, I'm just going to use the line DDA and then use this to make my trunk. So I kind of want it to be somewhat straight up, but with a little bit of variation in the size. You can then go into the shape here. I like adding to 1, if I can get that. And it just makes it slightly thicker for these larger type of trees. So I'm going to bring this up slightly higher and then press enter to paste that in. After that, I'm going to do the kind of branches. So I'm going to bring it back down to 0. Click twice so you get 2 of these, and then control 1 that it comes out like this. For these ones, I kind of did more of these upward facing ones. You can pick a tree, try and get one that has no leaves so you can kind of see the shape that you want to base it off of. So for this one, I'm going to go like this. For these ones, I like the breastband just because it's less of the log in the way. And then I kind of just go around adding in different ones as I go. And then the way I kind of do it is I go to the top and I draw an imaginary circle around. You could just, if I went like that, I'll undo that because that is not the one I wanted. I can go in here, grab a flat disc, make it hollow and slightly larger. And then you drag it down to the bottom. And then I have that kind of as a guideline of how far out I want each of the branches to go. So I'll bring that out to 20, looking straight down, and then I can kind of use that to guide myself. So back to the path. If you want to paste that circle in, it would help you keep track, but I've been doing this for a bit, so I kind of have an idea of the shape I want. Then just go around, add in. Some of them can be facing kind of sloping down, like gravity's holding them down, while others are straight up. It's just not doing too many of just a straight across ones. is it just doesn't look too natural. There's no gravity or forces against it. So just adding in slight amounts of variation can help. So I'll go around and add in some branches, and then we can go to the next step. All right, so here is what I just quickly did. It doesn't have to look too good because a lot of this is going to be covered by the leaves. And as you can see here, you can't really see through any of the leaves. If you have a certain texture pack that makes them a lot more transparent, maybe you want to spend a bit more time. But for my technique, it doesn't matter quite as much. So I'm going to hop back into Axiom. Using the freehand select, I'm using a sphere of about a 5 radius. Depending on how big you want your tree, a smaller or larger radius works. What I do is then I set a block mask, if you top right here, of just air. So you just select this one here, air. So then it doesn't affect any of my branches or the logs in the center. I then click on each of the ends of the branches, rotating around just so I don't accidentally click over like this, and then select that area over there. So I want to just click onto each of these. So you can see here with the yellow lines in the center, it's showing that area is not selected. So I want to make sure not too many of those are like that. Don't want to miss grabbing when control left clicking. And then maybe just another one there. So next what you're wanting to do is going over to the noise painter. So I've set up with oak leaves and acacia leaves at about 30% each. This means that 60% of the area selected will turn into leaves, while the remaining 40% will be left to air. I'm going to lower the scale to probably about 2 so that there's no big gaps left. And then I'm just going to paint in this area. Keeping the mask on of air allows it so that it doesn't mess with any of my branches or the trunk, and it just does in the area selected with just air. After that, I'm going to deselect this and remove the mask. I'm going to come out and just kind of fly around. So right now you can see there's just basically a bunch of balls of leaves. So if you want it to look a little bit more messy like these ones, you come back in and you go to the roughen tool. So for this one, it's a very useful tool for these kinds of things when you kind of want to make it look a little bit different and more natural opposed to these kind of shapes that are given in these mods. So I'm going to reduce the size a little bit and just drag around. If you see, it just changes up the way that they are. There's these kind of tools here, so if you increase the ratio, it'll do a lot more changes. And if you change the min faces, so this changes how many faces facing air will be left. So you click 4, not much will change. I prefer to keep it around 1, and then you have this add and remove area here. So if you have just add, it'll add the blocks on top and it won't delete any. So this is how you kind of make it a little slightly bigger whilst also roughening it up. If you have it just remove, it'll slowly eat away at your build. But if you keep both on, it'll add and remove at the same time, creating more of that natural kind of randomness you want for these kinds of things. So go around and just drag around into the areas that seem too kind of perfect and orderly. After that, you kind of want to rotate around, change your angle, look at it from different areas. And you can see this one, I can still see the shapes of the different spheres I made. So I'm going to go and click the remove only and just pick away at these. Kind of play around, get the shapes right. This also gets rid of the fact of any like flat facing areas. So if you have too many flat areas, this is a perfect tool for kind of roughening it up, as the name suggests. And if you get close in here, you can see there are still some gaps. So you want to add the air just to make it a little bit more lively. You can then go in and add in the different kind of short grasses on top to make it fluffier, or using different kind of mods and texture packs or shaders to make your leaves look more alive. There are some that add a bit more texture past just the cube of this. Alright, now onto the final trees of this kind of video here are the apple trees I prepared for the apple orchard in the farming district. So I just did a very basic variation of a tree, added in a similar technique to how I just showed with these guys, but just on a much smaller scale. So you can see there's all the air gaps, it's kind of rough, has all the air in it, as well as the different types of leaves. And then we have these apples. So what I did is I just went to the Playerhead website and I grabbed an apple. You place it into a command block, click, and then you're given a head. You can also make it an entity and then do the things where I've shown in past episodes where you can place it like this, but for this, a solid block works just as well, if not better. So then I just tossed in a couple around here, a couple different variations so that the orchard doesn't look too similar like it's overly tended to. It's a little bit left to nature. So now we can go on into showing how I turn these into a forest itself. So when you're designing a forest for like a large build like I'm doing, if you want to have a path in, you kind of want to design the path first so then you can build your trees around it. You can also do your forest and then just break down trees, but when you get these larger ones that you place, the leaves won't decay on their own. So it'll be a lot harder to kind of break down without leaving any like floating leaves. So what I do is similar to episode 2 when I did all of the pine and spruce trees, I make blueprints of all my trees. So I'll show you on this side. Try and get these out of the way. So I've got all the spruce trees from that episode, and then all these oak and birch trees. I name them like this. So what I'll do is I'll show you how we get these, again, like I did in the second episode. What you do is you want to select everything that you want to turn into a blueprint. So you can use any of these, so the magic select, box select, or freehand select. I find the box works better for big builds like this. You want to make sure you don't select the grass in these types, just so that you're not pasting grass on top. If you have any hills, it'll make just a big flat square. So once you confirm that everything you want turned into a blueprint is in this box, you then Control-C to copy it, and then Control-P to turn it into a blueprint. These can be changed in your keybinds in the top here on that. You can change it to whatever you want it to be. You then choose a name. So oak, I think this will be 11. So the author is me, and then you can add these tags. So it gives things that you can sort so you can find them easier in the blueprint browser. So there's a tree one, so I save this. This will pop up a menu, and you can save it into the folder. So it'll be in whatever, for me, I have it in the Modernth app, profiles, and then whatever I called it, the profile I made, which is called build for mine, config, axiom, and then blueprints. And it'll be a folder of all of your blueprint files. So the name of, so oak11.bp, then you save that, and then that will now be over here. So you can see it's here. If you want to just paste one at a time, you just select it, and then Control-V, and paste it in like that. For my purposes, I want to paste a bunch of these in. So I go in with the stamp tool. So circling it over onto my path here, I go in and click Add Blueprint. That brings you over to the blueprint browser, and then you select whichever one you want. So Oak 1, and then that brings it to the bottom left here. You can keep clicking, and it'll just add in to the bottom left. You can choose how often you want that. So if you want this one a lot more and maybe less birches, you can change the chance here. The automatic offset is helpful because it changes the rotation of it and kind of makes it look a little different for even if you're pasting the same tree over and over. What I like to do is have these presets over here. So I have a large tree and a small tree one. So the large tree includes all the large trees I've made in different variations. So I even included one of my spruce trees from the second episode, but I put it at a lower chance, just so it's a little less likely for this one to be placed. Next, you choose the kind of radius you want to place these in. There's all these other ones that you can add. For this, I click this one, Extend Foundation to Ground. As you can see here, it duplicates the bottom layer downwards until it reaches a solid block. This just removes any chance of having any floating trees in there. Next, you can just start drawing. So as you can see, it's pasting them all, kind of rotating between them. If you go over the same area, it'll kind of delete any that are in the way, and you let go, and you've got that. So I'm going to come back out of Axiom so you can kind of fly it around here. So it's all of them kind of put together. Occasionally you'll get them that they kind of clip into each other, but that's sometimes good because you want a nice tight forest. The reason why I separate it into two different kind of presets, large and small, so then when I go with my small, I got all the small ones selected here. I can go around into these areas now that I'm on the ground. You can see this is very open. Of course, you'll have your terrain with like different hills, which will help. But then, with you go to the small one, I'm going to lower this shape, the radius here, and then just paint in the small ones in underneath the kind of canopy. So now you can compare this big open space, and then you got your smaller trees. You can make it slightly more dense depending on how you work with it. I can add in more if I want. This will kind of delete some if you go around. And then as you see here, it tried to paste on top of here, but it stopped it, which is nice. So what you can do is do your large trees in the large area and then go down inside and do your small trees. You can also do the same thing for if you have any like rock formations or any pre-built like bushes and such. You can do that at the same time with maybe a different preset. So that's how I plan to do this kind of forest that I'm going to do in the main area. You want to kind of have your path set out if you want to kind of go through, if you want to have like a path through your kind of forest. If you don't and you just want it to be kind of a back set, kind of like how I have over here. So we'll fly back real quick. So you can see for these ones, I don't really have anything in between. I'll have a single path probably around this area that'll come down from the mountains, but that's an easy fix of just deleting a couple trees. As you can see here, there's nothing really in these areas because I already have the rock formations from the cliffs itself. So I didn't need to worry about that. If you were going to have it kind of be a location you want to get from point A, so let's say if I load in here, if I wanted to get a nice path from the village and there was something like an objective you have to get to over here, you would design your path and then build around it. For this one, I don't really have a plan, so I'm just gonna freestyle it and then paste the big trees in, kind of outline the area. It's more of a backdrop opposed to kind of a setting you want to walk through. So I'll go through that, plan that out, and we can see the different parts. So as I was mentioning, you can also add things like boulders in. So I kind of just threw this together. I was using the rock tool, kind of just drag around. You get a nice little rock shape that's a little irregular. You can then go in and paint it. So just want the stone, quick paint, and then I came in here with some just different moss, even the pale moss. It's placing on top, so you don't want that. So nice thing about this, adds a little more texture here. Then I turn this into a blueprint, and then what you can do with the stamp tool, if you have a mask of just grass, it'll only place it on grass. Because if you don't have this, you can have some that place in the trees and you don't want that. So if you just have mask of just grass, now you'll place some in just on the grass. What I did is I increased the min spacing, so I set it up to over 400%. As you can see here, I'll just do a demo. If it's down at 0%, you're just pasting them on top of each other. If you're at 100%, they give a little bit of space between each other. If you go to max to 800%, even if I select this whole area, we only get a couple. So depending on how many boulders you want in your forest, so I set around 400. I can then just go in and drag around. It won't mess with any of the trees because I have this grass on with the mask. And then I have keep existing, so it's not gonna kind of delete the trees at all, and keep it on the ground with the extend foundation. With the random yaw, XY, that stuff, that keeps it so even if it's just the same one, you can see these are the exact same, but they look different because they're rotated around. So if you now go through your little forest, you've got a little bit more detail within those rocks. Alright, one final bit of detail before we get towards the main building of the forest for this build is going to be a little bit more detailing on the ground. So when you come through here, yes, there'll be hills and such, but it still feels very flat. So what you want to do is you want to get these natural blocks. So short grass, ferns, bushes, maybe even some pointed dripstone. Then you want to go into Axiom. The way I do it is I grab freehand select, I grab the below, and then grass. So this checks for any blocks that have grass below it. So it'll just be the air. I then go around and I select the area. So everything in this area is now selected one layer above the grass. Next, I go to the noise painter, and I've already set up this. So it's the 4 things I mentioned. So the grass, ferns, bushes, and pointed dripstone. You can then go and then set a block mask of just air. And this allows you to just paint with these. So it's like similar to bone meal, but a little bit easier and faster. If you want a little bit more spread out, you can lower these percentages so you get more air in it. And there we go. The one downside of this technique is you can't do the large and tall ones. So like the large fern and then the tall grass. Because when you do, I'll show it to you. So I'll grab this and I'll toss this in here. As you can see, it only places it on the bottom. I've yet to figure out a way to do it with Axiom, but there is the way of just, if I turn this off, I can just randomly scatter these in, and that's how you do it manually. Once I figure out how to do it with like Axiom and masks maybe, as you can see I was testing some, but nothing seemed to work properly. It was just pasting the bottom half twice. So this will just be good enough just to add a bit more detail. So if I go in here, I can select this, and then swap out to this one, and, oh, not that one, I want to remove that, and like that. You want to make sure that you don't do any of the replacements, so you don't want it to like delete part of your log and place somewhere else. So a nice thing about when you have these stuff placed, underneath it's not grass anymore, it's dirt. So it won't place it on those blocks. So it's a safe way of doing it without deleting any of the blocks you've already placed. So now let's get to a time lapse of me placing all these trees inside the mountain range. And here we are. So I've gone in and added in some of the little trees to fill in the gaps. So if I kind of walk through, so some of them have kind of merged together, but since this isn't a place I'm going to be frequenting inside, it doesn't matter quite as much. I also added in some of these boulders, just kind of waved around. The way I did it is after I did all the big trees, I came in with my small tree one and just dragged along on top of here. With the grass mask, it doesn't place them on top. So like if I didn't have it on, see it places on the top. If I place this onto it, you can see it just places them underneath. So you kind of just want to fill in any areas that are kind of blank. Once you're doing big ones like this, it doesn't matter quite as much, especially if you're not going to be using this as a setting within your world, and it's more of just a backdrop like everything else. So now if we come to the village, another area, it feels a little bit more full here. So if I can swing around, brought it up to the edge here, brought over the pine and spruce trees up against. I went up and as close as I could in the kind of flatter areas, and then brought this over and it kind of melds and then transitions into this forest from here. So I got more space, so if I need to expand this forest, I can. It's not too difficult of a thing, especially with all of these stamps I've made. So the large tree, pine trees, and the small trees, so I can easily kind of switch in between to paint large forests within minutes. This whole forest probably took me a total of 5, maybe 10 minutes. So it's a really easy way of doing large settings if you're doing something like me with such a large world. It just helps you save a bunch of time instead of how I did these originally, which was select tree, Control V, and then like this. That took forever, so learning about the stamp tool really speeds up everything. So that's another large portion of this area done. So if you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos coming soon. Until next time.